Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time, back with his Thursday. Thursday? What day is today? Thursday.
Thursday, yeah.
Yeah, every day Saturday, Dana. Just every day Saturday.
I love it.
Yeah. So we are talking about communicating with tenants, right? Again, self-management, leveraging Himlane. What are your thoughts about texting tenants?
Yeah, and the reason I love this topic is I've noticed it more and more within this last 6 months of how I communicate. So typically I send someone an email, and if I don't hear from them, like I'll put a little if no response within 24 hours or whatever,
Mhm.
put back to the top of my inbox,
Got it.
or however long I think is appropriate for a response. And I used to follow up on that email saying, hey, bumping this up,
Mhm.
want to hear from you. Now, what I do is I say, okay, great, let me just text them. And more, I notice responses are faster through text message.
For sure. Yeah.
And tenants realize that as well, right? That if I send an email, I might not hear it back right away, because usually with text messages or with emails, people kind of think, 24 hours, 48 hours, it's not an emergency.
Mhm.
So I've heard more and more, which is why I think this topic is a really interesting one. We hear more and more, I'm sick of my tenants text messaging me. That's why I want to use Hemlane.
Mm.
And it's come up so much that you kind of just need to take a step back and say, wow, you and your tenants are text messaging a lot. And
Yeah.
I have some thoughts on that. I want to hear your thoughts as well. But first of all, make sure it's not your personal number. Like, personal life is separate from business. This is a business relationship. Make sure it's separate. But the question is, do you really want to implement text messaging into your process? And what are your standards
Mhm.
of communication? And there are things that are going to be emergencies
Sure.
with a property. So if you're not using repair coordination through Hemlane or through a property manager, you need some number the tenant can call when pipes have burst. Like, you
Yep.
definitely need that. The question is setting that expectation of, does this number, will we respond via text message,
Mhm.
or will it be just for phone purposes only and you can call it? And then otherwise, should things go through email? So my opinion on it is that you really want to, with a business, especially if you're self-managing and you're super busy, say phone calls for emergency repairs. Everything else goes either through the system, or if you don't have a system in place, goes through email,
Yeah.
because you can track it, even check open receipts on it, all of that kind of stuff. And having only those two, text message is good. But what I find is that you get into these kind of chat wars with
Yeah.
tenants. And suddenly it's like, well, it would have been just easier to pick up the phone and talk about that. Or, which I think a lot of people forget, that you can still talk on the phone.
Yeah.
We should have this in an email and have a very thoughtful response
Yeah.
to whatever is going on, rather than, chat is very reactive. They always say, if like you're angry about something, it's like, step away from it, come back, 5 hours later, and your response is going to be much different.
Yeah.
And so very similar in that sense, is I hear more and more often that chat has become a way to make you feel like the rentals are so burdensome, because they expect a response right away. So anyways, that's why my favorite is actually sticking to calls, and then systems that
Mhm.
are like emails, et cetera. Now that can send a text message to the tenant to alert them, and they can
Yeah.
go and respond, but it gets tracked in the system. And not setting up this, hey, even if it's a small thing, I'm going to respond right away. If it's an emergency, yes, please call this number. We'll pick up 24/7.
Right. Yeah. When I saw this topic on our list today, I was like, I just don't think setting the precedent of having texting being the communication between a landlord and a tenant is what I want. It's too easy. It's too burdensome. There's unknown expectations. It doesn't give me the audit trail, all the extra stuff that email gives me. Um, I am not a fan. If you've set up texting with your tenants, um, and again, I've seen a real change, right? And some of this is age related, right? Millennials and Gen Z are certainly kind of text first, where baby boomers and Gen X are kind of still email first.
Yep.
I think if you're like in student housing today, Oh man, I could not imagine the text chains that you have. I just couldn't imagine. But yeah, I think one of the things you got to remember as a landlord, you're running a service business. You need to set expectations. I think you have two: phone number for emergencies and email for everything else. I would not introduce texting.
Yeah.
And certainly never give out your personal number. Oh my God, I couldn't imagine.
Well, yeah. And you know what you say, you can't imagine, but I don't know the numbers, but I would say probably over 50%.
Oh, I'm sure it's
landlords
70%.
given. Yeah. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah.
I would say it's most likely over 50% give that number.
Oh, for sure.
And yeah, I think from that perspective, if tenants should understand that here's the expected turnaround time on things, and it's going to be much more professional for you as well as for the tenant, because they know upfront exactly what to expect, and they can refer back to the lease if they have any questions.
Yeah, you want to set up that communication is good. It's awesome. Speed is good and awesome, but you want audit trail, you want systems, you want service levels. And again, you really do need a system in place. So what I would tell you to do if you're a new landlord and just thinking about it is you need to take the 30-day trial that Dana from Hemlane has put out for us. You get the 30-day trial at hemlane.com. If you want my free course, there's a PDF with all the steps. If you have the paid course, how to get started one rental at a time, there's a video series in the bonus section called Self-Management. Dana, any closing thoughts?
No, I think that's it. I guess one closing thought would be if your tenants do have your personal number, go get a Google Voice number.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be my closing thought. You can do that now. I think it's still free if you're on the consumer end. I think Google Voice may still be free. So,
yeah. And lastly, if you're going to do Hemlane, make sure you use the discount one rental at a time. You might as well save some money. Thanks, Dana.
Thanks, Michael.